4 years ago, I stepped into a house that promised warmth, but it concealed a predator ready to pounce. This is the story of how I escaped a nightmare spun by someone I thought I trusted, a man whose charm hid a chilling madness. Close your eyes and picture a smile that feels too perfect, a lie waiting to unravel. It begins in comfort and ends in dread, a descent into a trap I barely survived. In the fall of 2021, I moved into a friend's house near my university. The place hummed with life. My friend Caleb, his sister Lila, their parents, and me, sharing laughter over dinners and late-night chats. Feel the glow of those evenings, the clink of glasses, the faint scent of cigarette smoke drifting in the garden. 2 weeks in, Lila brought her boyfriend Marcus to live with us. He was magnetic, his stories drawing us in like moths to a flame. With a quick wit and easy grin, he'd hold court at the kitchen table, weaving tales of adventure as we sipped cheap wine. See his eyes, bright and inviting, pulling you closer. But beneath that charm, something dark stirred, waiting to break free. Within a month, Marcus's facade began to crack. Have you ever watched someone's mask slip? Their words turning sharp like broken glass. His rants about government conspiracies filled the air, his voice rising with paranoia. He'd pace the living room, claiming he was always the victim, wronged by the world. He was obsessed with Sigma male ideals, practicing martial arts in the backyard with a ferocity that felt unhinged. Feel the tension creep into your chest, the air growing heavy. He kept a massive dog locked in a cage, a beast so violent it lunged at anyone when Marcus wasn't around. One night it broke free and attacked Lila, its jaws snapping inches from her throat. The dog was put down, but Marcus's guilt trips began, his words twisting Lila's pain into his own narrative. Hear his voice, low and manipulative, pulling her deeper into his control. By winter, Marcus's behavior grew unbearable. Caleb's parents demanded he leave, but he refused to go alone. Imagine a man so desperate to cling to power that he'd drag someone into his chaos. He rented a shipping container in a grim storage yard on the town's edge. Not a trendy converted home, but a cold, rusted box surrounded by chain-link fences. He coerced Lila to join him, promising a new start. Picture the container, its metal walls closing in, the air thick with rust and despair. Marcus terrorized the yard's staff, his threats so menacing they called the police. To him, it was just another conspiracy, another reason to rage. His abuse toward Lila escalated, shouting matches controlling her every move. Caleb and I devised a plan to get her out, pretending to be Marcus's allies while secretly coordinating with her family. Feel the weight of deception, the fear of being caught. When Lila finally escaped, Marcus blamed me, accusing me of stealing her for myself. His messages flooded my phone, venomous and unhinged, until we blocked him on every platform. Breathe a sigh of relief, thinking it's over. But he wasn't gone, not yet. Last year, the past clawed its way back. What if someone you thought was gone was watching you, waiting? Strange messages appeared on my social media. Some friendly, others hostile, all from unfamiliar accounts. I blocked them one by one, my stomach twisting as I realized Marcus was behind them. Sense the unease, the feeling of eyes on you from the shadows. One account stood out, posing as a university friend named Sarah. Her messages were warm, nostalgic, luring me into long chats about life and old times. Fall into the rhythm of those words, so familiar, so safe. She invited me to a house party, promising a free house packed with friends. I booked time off work, made travel plans, my excitement growing. Picture the anticipation, the hum of a road trip ahead. Days before the party, I mentioned it to Lila, who froze when I shared the address. Pause. Feel the air shift, the warmth draining away. The house belonged to Marcus's father, listed for sale, empty and abandoned. What would you do if you realized you were walking into a trap? My blood ran cold, but I played along, keeping my responses vague. On the day of the party, I called the police, reporting a possible break-in at the address. Hear the dial tone, the weight of each second ticking by. When they arrived, they found 5 people inside, including Marcus, his eyes wild with intent. Parked outside was a butcher van, its cold storage unit gleaming under streetlights. Inside, a chilling arsenal waited, knives glinting like teeth, hammers heavy with purpose, and coils of rope that whispered restraint. Stare into that van, the tools laid out like a predator's plan. The police detained them, but I never learned what Marcus intended. Let the question linger. What was he planning for me? As I sit here now, safe but shaken, I can't shake the image of that van, its contents a puzzle of malice. Close your eyes again, but this time feel the chill of what might have been. I escaped Marcus's trap, but the memory of his twisted mind haunts me, a reminder that some monsters wear human faces. Walk away from this story, but carry its weight, a warning to trust your instincts. The forest was my refuge, a place where silence drowned out the chaos of the world. But that night, the silence broke, replaced by a presence that wasn't human, a gaze that pierced through the dark. I'm not one to fear the unknown. But what I found at 3 a.m. in those woods still claws at my mind. I live far from anyone, my home nestled in a sea of pines and oaks, where the nearest neighbor is a whisper carried by the wind. Hunting is my ritual, a solitary dance with the wild that steadies my soul. That morning, the air was sharp, slicing through my lungs with every breath, my boots crunching frost as I moved through the pre-dawn gloom. The stars were fading, and the forest felt unnaturally still, as if it were holding its breath, waiting for something to shatter the quiet. I was tracking a deer, its hoofprints etched clearly in the damp earth. Each step was measured, my eyes locked on the trail, my senses attuned to the pulse of the woods. But then, the print stopped. Not faded, stopped, as if the deer had been lifted from the ground. A cold dread coiled in my gut, urging me to look. I resisted, but the pull was too strong. High in a twisted oak, the deer hung, its body torn open, entrails spilling like grotesque ribbons. No human hunter could do this. The cuts were too wild, too precise in their savagery. Its lifeless eyes seemed to shift, watching me, and for a moment I felt them pierce my soul. My breath caught, my heart thundering in my chest. The forest, once my ally, now felt like a trap. I turned to leave, my truck 4 miles away, but each step grew heavier, as if the air itself resisted me. Something was watching. The sensation was suffocating, like invisible eyes drilling into my back. I swept the trees with my night vision scope, praying for a bear, a coyote, anything familiar. But what I saw was no animal. 2 glowing orbs, too large, too high off the ground, burned through the darkness. They weren't eyes, they were voids, pulsing with a hunger that wasn't of this world. Then came the sound. Not a growl, not a scream, but a yell. Deep, guttural, almost human, yet impossibly wrong. It echoed through the trees, a command that froze my blood. Run! Run now! I bolted, my boots slamming the earth, branches tearing at my skin. The forest seemed to warp, familiar paths twisting into a labyrinth. My lungs screamed, but I didn't dare stop. The yell came again, closer, as if the thing matched my stride. I couldn't look back. Fear wouldn't let me. All I saw was the faint glow of dawn ahead, a lifeline in the chaos. 4 miles stretched into eternity, but I reached my truck, my hands trembling as I fumbled the keys. I climbed in, locked the door, and gunned the engine. As I sped away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. It was there, a silhouette towering and still, framed by the rising sun. It didn't chase, it just watched. Sleep didn't come when I got home. My wife found me pacing, my rifle still in hand, my mind replaying those eyes, that yell. I told her everything, expecting disbelief. But she'd felt it too. Eyes in the dark, lurking at the tree line when she walked at dusk. Our newborn son slept nearby, and the thought of that thing near him turned my fear to resolve. At dawn, I checked my truck, hoping it was a dream. But there they were, handprints larger than any man's smeared across the hood. No human could leave such marks. I checked my trail cameras next. 3 were dead, their lenses cracked. 1 survived, angled toward the oak where the deer hung. The footage was blurry, but it showed something, tall, lean, moving with an unnatural grace. It paused, turned toward the camera, and the feed dissolved into static. That was enough. I'm no stranger to the wild, but this was no animal, no ghost story I could shrug off. We packed our lives and left that house within weeks. The new place was closer to town, safer, but the forest still haunts my dreams. Sometimes in the dead of night I hear that yell again, faint but unmistakable. My wife hears it too, though she tries to hide it. Last week she woke me, her voice trembling, saying she saw something outside. A shadow, too tall, too still. I don't hunt anymore. The wild was my home, but now it belongs to something else. Something that knows I'm gone, but hasn't forgotten me. The night was heavier than I expected, like the air itself was holding its breath. I've never been one to buy into ghost stories or things that go bump in the dark. My world is concrete, logic, reason, the kind of stuff you can touch and measure. But there are moments, rare and jagged, that slice through your certainty like a knife. This was one of those moments, and it's burned into me, flickering like a bad dream I can't shake. My name's Elliot, and back when I was 27, I was crashing at my parents' place for a few months. It was a quiet suburban house, the kind with creaky floors and a front yard framed by old oaks. That night I was on dog duty. Our old beagle, Rusty, needed to do his business before bed, so I grabbed his leash and stepped out into the cool October air. The sky was a deep, starless black, and the streetlights barely touched the edges of the yard. It felt like the world was watching, but I brushed it off as late-night jitters. I stood on the driveway, Rusty sniffing the grass, when something caught my eye. There, by the big oak at the edge of the yard, stood a man. Not a person exactly, but a shape. A tall, sharp silhouette, blacker than the night around it. He wore a wide-brimmed hat, like the kind my dad kept in his closet for fishing trips. My first thought was simple. It's Dad, probably out here for some reason. But a prickle of unease ran down my spine. Why would he be standing there motionless, in the dark? "Dad?" I called, my voice swallowed by the stillness. No answer. Rusty froze, his ears twitching, but he didn't bark. That should have been my first warning. Rusty barks at everything. Squirrels, cars, even leaves blowing across the lawn. But now he just stood there, legs trembling, a low whine trapped in his throat. I called again, louder. "Dad, what are you doing out here?" Nothing. The figure didn't move, didn't shift, just loomed there, a void carved into the night. Then I heard it, a faint hum of voices from inside the house. My dad's voice, muffled but clear. drifting from my parents' bedroom. He was inside. He'd been inside the whole time. My stomach twisted, a cold knot tightening as I realized whoever, or whatever, was standing by that tree wasn't my father. It wasn't anyone I knew. The figure tilted its head, slow and deliberate, and then it bent forward, as if beckoning Rusty to come closer. The dog let out a sharp yelp, and I saw it. A stream of liquid pooling beneath him, his body shaking, like he was about to collapse. He was terrified, and so was I. Close your eyes, Elliot. Just run. But I couldn't. My feet were rooted to the driveway, my breath shallow as I squinted into the darkness. The figure wasn't solid, it was a silhouette. A hole in reality, its edges blurring like smoke. The hat, the coat, the shape of a man, but no face, no substance. It wasn't human. My heart pounded, a drumbeat drowning out the world. Rusty's leash slipped from my hand and I stumbled backward, tripping over my own feet as I bolted for the front door. Inside, I slammed the door shut, my hands shaking so badly I could barely turn the lock. It's not real. It's just your mind playing tricks. I told myself that over and over, but the image of that figure burned behind my eyes. I grabbed a flashlight and forced myself to look outside again, half expecting to see it standing on the porch. Nothing. The yard was empty. The oak tree just a tree. The only proof anything had happened was Rusty's pee, still glistening on the driveway. But let me take you back to another night, years before when I was a kid. I was maybe 10, staying up late watching horror movies in my room. My dad caught. He laughed and said, "Monsters aren't real, Elliot. They're just shadows your brain makes up when you're scared." I believed him then. Shadows were just shadows. But that night in the yard, the shadow wasn't mine. It wasn't Rusty's. It belonged to something else, something that didn't belong in my world. For years, I buried the memory. It was a hallucination, right? I'd been tired, stressed, maybe dehydrated. Rusty must have sensed my fear and freaked out. That's what I told myself, because admitting anything else felt like stepping into a nightmare. I'm not a believer in ghosts or demons. I don't go to church, don't pray, don't light candles to ward off evil. But Rusty's reaction gnawed at me. He'd never acted like that before. Never peed himself, never stood frozen instead of barking his head off. Animals know things we don't. Then, last Halloween, I stumbled across a video online. Just a random compilation of creepy stories, the kind you watch for a cheap thrill. One story stopped me cold. A woman described seeing a figure in her backyard, tall and black, wearing a wide-brimmed hat. No face, no features, just a shadow that made her dog whimper and hide. She called it the Hat Man, said people all over the world had seen it. Same hat, same silhouette, same bone-deep terror. My blood ran cold. I rewatched the clip, then dug deeper. Forums, articles, first-hand accounts. Hundreds of people from different countries, different lives, all describing the exact same thing I'd seen. What was it doing there, in my parents' yard? I still don't know. I don't want to know. But I can't unsee it, the way it stood, the way it moved, the way Rusty's eyes locked onto it like he was staring into hell. It felt like it wanted something, like it was waiting for me to step closer. I never told my parents, I never told anyone. It's embarrassing, admitting you saw something you can't explain, something that makes you question everything you thought you knew. But every time I visit that house, I avoid the front yard at night. I keep the curtains drawn, and I check on Rusty, make sure he's okay. Because whatever that thing was, it wasn't just in my head. Rusty saw it too. When you walk through your own home, Do you ever feel it watching you? Not your family, not your pets, but something else. Something that lingers in the corners of your vision, whispering your name in the dead of night. For Elliot, that feeling wasn't just a fleeting chill. It was a constant companion in the house his family built 15 years ago. A place that should have been a sanctuary, but felt like a cage for unseen guests. Elliot was 12 when he first noticed them. The house, a modern 3-story haven, nestled in a quiet suburb, seemed too new for ghosts. Yet in the stillness of midnight he'd hear it, a faint scratching like fingernails dragging across the walls of his 3rd-floor bedroom. Sometimes a soft thud against the windows, as if someone or something tapped from the inside. Close your eyes and imagine it now. The sound of your own home turning against you, each creak a heartbeat of something alive in the shadows. At first, he dismissed it as imagination, the overactive mind of a kid who'd watched too many horror movies. But the shadows didn't stay in his head. One chilly autumn morning, as Elliot shuffled through the hallway from the kitchen to the front door, ready for middle school, the air grew heavy. The kitchen light flickered, casting a warm glow behind him. Then a shadow moved where no one should be. It stretched across the hardwood floor, tall and distorted, its edges fraying like smoke. Elliot froze, his backpack slipping from his shoulder. Feel that moment. Your heart pounding, your breath caught as you realize you're not alone. He called out, "Mom? Noah?" His voice echoed in the empty house. No answer. The shadow quivered as if it heard him, and then vanished, trembling. He sprinted to his mother Clara's car outside, his words tumbling out in a panic. Clara's face softened, but her eyes held a secret. "I've seen them too, Elliot," she said quietly. "We call them visitors." Clara's words unlocked a hidden truth. These visitors weren't new. They'd been there all along, playful at times, wandering at others, or fleeting like a guest who overstayed their welcome. Some left giggles echoing in the stairwell. Others pressed against the walls, their presence heavy with unspoken intent. They'd appear for a day, sometimes a week, then vanish for months, leaving the family in uneasy silence. Picture it. A.E. Home where every shadow could be a stranger, every sound a warning. Noah, Elliot's older brother, once scoffed at the idea of ghosts, his atheism a shield against the unknown. But when he saw a figure drift across his room, its form dissolving, into the moonlight his certainty crumbled. Now, both brothers were agnostic, tethered to a reality that defied logic. The house wasn't just a house anymore. It was a stage for these visitors, and Elliot couldn't shake the feeling that they were tied to the land itself. Whispers of a Native American burial ground lingered in local lore, a sacred place disturbed when the house was built. What would you do if your home stood on stolen earth, its spirits restless and watching? Clara once found an arrowhead in the backyard, its edges worn but sharp, as if it carried a message from centuries past. The family never spoke of it, but the weight of that discovery pressed against their dreams. Years later, Elliot still walks. That hallway, each step a test of courage. The visitors never left. They linger in the flicker of the kitchen light, in the soft tap against his window. And as you sit in your own home tonight, listen closely. What shadows are watching you? The air felt wrong that night, heavy, like it was holding its breath, waiting for something to break. Caleb stood alone in the creaking mansion his parents called home, a relic from the 19th century, with shadows that seemed to move when you weren't looking. He was 20, back for a football game near his childhood town, and had chosen to crash in his old bedroom rather than wake at dawn for the drive. The house, with its warped wooden floors and peeling wallpaper, always carried an eerie weight. But tonight, it was different. It wasn't just the silence, it was the kind of quiet that pressed against your chest, daring you to breathe too loudly. Years ago, his parents had bought this place at a steal, a bargain sealed by a grim secret. The previous owner's son had taken his life in the attic, a fact whispered only once when Caleb was 17. That attic, now his parents' renovated bedroom, was a place he avoided. It wasn't just the history, it was the way the door at the top of the spiral staircase seemed to watch you, its brass knob glinting like an unblinking eye. Tonight, though, with his parents away at a wellness retreat in Germany, and his older brother long moved out, Caleb was alone. He locked every door, checked every window, and sent a goodnight text to his friends before sinking into the familiar creak of his childhood bed. Sleep came easily at first, the comfort of routine dulling the house's unsettling pulse. Then it began. At exactly 3 a.m., Caleb's eyes snapped open, his heart pounding as if yanked from a dream he couldn't recall. The room was pitch black, the blackout curtains swallowing any trace of moonlight. He lay still, straining to hear what had woken him. At first, there was nothing but his own uneven breaths. Then, faint and muffled, it came. A low, mournful, like the drone of a distant organ. It wasn't music you'd hum along to. It was the kind of sound that crawled under your skin, slow and deliberate, each note heavy with intent. Caleb froze, his mind racing. Was it a car outside? Some late-night joyrider with their stereo blaring? He clung to that thought, willing it to be true, but the sound didn't fade or shift like a passing vehicle. It grew, steady and unrelenting, seeping through the walls. He sat up, the bed springs groaning under his weight, and fumbled for his phone. The screen's glow cast harsh shadows, revealing nothing but the familiar clutter of his room. The music, if you could call it that, was louder now, its source unmistakable. The attic. His parents' bedroom. The place where a boy had once ended his life. Caleb's mouth went dry. He tried to rationalize it. Maybe the old radio up there, the one Mom kept for sentimental reasons, had turned itself on. It was a relic from the early 2000s, a gift from his late grandfather, rarely used because the single outlet was always occupied by his mother's phone charger. But faulty wiring, a power surge, those were explanations he could hold on to. He waited, counting to 10, then 20, hoping the sound would stop. It didn't. Instead, it swelled, the organ's notes weaving into a melody that felt alive, as if it were calling to him specifically. "Get up, Caleb. Come see." The thought wasn't his own. It slithered into his mind, cold and insistent. He shook it off, grabbing his phone to call his parents. No answer. His brother. Voicemail. The realization hit hard. He was alone, and whatever was upstairs wasn't going away. He couldn't just sit there, pretending it was nothing. "You're not a kid anymore. Face it." Caleb swung his legs out of bed, the floorboards icy against his bare feet. He crept to the bedroom door, each step deliberate, as if moving too fast might summon something worse. The hallway stretched before him, dark and narrow, the spiral staircase at its end a black void leading to the attic. The music was clearer now, its notes sharp and discordant, like a hymn played by hands that didn't understand joy. He gripped the door frame, his knuckles white, and forced himself to open the door. The sound surged, filling the hallway with a presence that felt almost physical, as if the air itself were vibrating with malice. He took a step forward, then another, the staircase looming closer. The organ's melody shifted, slowing as if aware of his approach. "It knows I'm coming." His mind screamed at him to turn back, to lock himself in his room and wait for daylight, but his feet kept moving, drawn by a force he couldn't name. The staircase creaked under his weight, each step amplifying the music until it was all he could hear, all he could feel. At the attic door, he paused, his hand trembling on the knob. The music was deafening now, a chorus of unseen voices woven into the organ's drone, urging him to enter. He turned the knob. The door swung open, and the music stopped. Not faded, not softened. Stopped, as if someone had yanked the plug. The silence was worse, heavy and expectant, like the moment before a scream. The attic was dark, the shapes of his parents' furniture barely discernible. No radio glowed, no wires sparked, just silence and the unshakable feeling that he wasn't alone. Caleb stumbled back, his breath ragged, and bolted downstairs. He flipped on every light, the harsh fluorescence a frail shield against the darkness. He sank onto the couch, clutching the remote, and played sitcom reruns until dawn, the canned laughter a desperate anchor to reality. The next day, Caleb played the worst football game of his life, his body sluggish, his mind replaying that unearthly melody. He never told his parents about that night, afraid they'd dismiss it as exhaustion or imagination. But he knew what he'd heard, what he'd felt. The attic wasn't just a room anymore. It was a doorway, and something on the other side had noticed him. In the dead of night, I woke to a stillness that wasn't mine, a presence that shouldn't have been there. This is a tale of a moment where reality and nightmare blurred, where a shadow left a mark I can't unsee. Hold your breath and imagine a hotel room at 3 a.m., the kind of quiet that feels alive watching you. It started with routine, but ended with a chill that clings to my every sleepless night. I'd arrived at a quaint hotel on the outskirts of a small town, a stopover for a work trip I'd done a dozen times before. The lobby carried the faint scent of old carpet and lavender, a scent meant to comfort but somehow unsettling. The clerk, Emma, handed me the key to room 214, her smile strained under the dim glow of a flickering bulb. Feel the exhaustion of travel, the way the air feels heavy with unspoken stories. I trudged to my room, the carpet muffling my steps, and pushed open the door. The space was familiar yet foreign. A double bed, a small desk, and a worn couch. In the corner, I dropped my backpack on the couch, its faded cushions sinking slightly under the weight, and laid out my clothes for the morning. See the room in your mind, a sanctuary that feels just a little too cold. I left to grab dinner at a diner down the street, the night air sharp against my skin. When I returned, the room felt different. The TV was on, its screen flickering with static, casting ghostly patterns on the walls. I hadn't touched it. Pause, feel the prickle on your neck, the question you don't want to ask. I dismissed it as a glitch, turned it off, and sank into bed by 9 p.m. The hum of the air conditioner a steady lullaby. At 3 a.m., I jolted awake, my body locked in the grip of sleep paralysis, a curse I'd lived with since childhood. Have you ever been trapped, your mind racing while your body betrays you? I lay on my side, my chest tight, my eyes straining against the darkness. Then I saw her, a woman sitting on the couch, her form stark against the faint glow of streetlight, seeping through the curtains. Picture her, a figure in a flowing white gown, her posture so perfect it feels unnatural, her long hair straight as a blade. She didn't move, didn't blink, just sat there, her presence a silent weight that pressed against my lungs. Feel your heart pound, the air growing thick with dread. Her gown shimmered with an eerie luminescence, not from light, but from something beyond this world. Her stillness was suffocating, as if she existed in a space between life and death, watching me with eyes I couldn't see but felt. What if she's been there all along? waiting for you to notice. I wanted to break free, to scream, but fear held me captive. The thought of moving, of making myself known to her, sent a shiver down my spine. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying for escape, fall into the void, hoping it's just a dream. When I opened my eyes at 6 a.m., sunlight flooded the room, chasing away the shadows. Breathe, believing it's over. But the memory of her lingered, sharp and unyielding. I sat up, my gaze darting. To the couch, my stomach dropped. Look closer, see the truth. My backpack, neatly placed the night before, was pushed to one side. The cushions rearranged as if someone had made space to sit. The seat where she'd been was sunken, the fabric creased in a way that felt too fresh, too deliberate. Touch it, feel the lingering warmth, the proof of something impossible. I checked the door, locked, the windows sealed. No one could have entered, yet the evidence was undeniable. I went to the front desk, my hands trembling as I asked Emma if anyone had reported strange occurrences in room 214. Hear her hesitate, her voice barely above a whisper. She paused, then told me about a guest named Ryan, who'd stayed there months ago. He'd woken to find his belongings moved, a faint outline on the couch, and a lingering scent of lilies that had no source. Smell it now, faint but haunting, clinging to the air. Emma insisted the hotel had no history of break-ins, but her eyes betrayed her. She knew more than she was saying. What secrets was she keeping? I left that hotel, but the image of the woman follows me. Close your eyes, but see her still, sitting in perfect silence. Was she a ghost, a trick of my mind, or something darker? The sunken cushion, the moved belongings, they're proof something was there. Walk away, but feel her gaze waiting for the next sleepless night. In the dead of night, I woke to a stillness that wasn't mine, a presence that shouldn't have been there. This is a tale of a moment where reality and nightmare blurred, where a shadow left a mark I can't unsee. Hold your breath and imagine a hotel room at 3 a.m., the kind of quiet that feels alive watching you. It started with routine, but ended with a chill that clings to my every sleepless night. I'd arrived at a quaint hotel on the outskirts of a small town, a stopover for a work trip I'd done a dozen times before. The lobby carried the faint scent of old carpet and lavender, a scent meant to comfort but somehow unsettling. The clerk, Emma, handed me the key to room 214, her smile strained under the dim glow of a flickering bulb. Feel the exhaustion of travel, the way the air feels heavy with unspoken stories. I trudged to my room, the carpet muffling my steps, and pushed open the door. The space was familiar yet foreign. A double bed, a small desk, and a worn couch. In the corner, I dropped my backpack on the couch, its faded cushions sinking slightly under the weight, and laid out my clothes for the morning. See the room in your mind, a sanctuary that feels just a little too cold. I left to grab dinner at a diner down the street, the night air sharp against my skin. When I returned, the room felt different. The TV was on, its screen flickering with static, casting ghostly patterns on the walls. I hadn't touched it. Pause, feel the prickle on your neck, the question you don't want to ask. I dismissed it as a glitch, turned it off, and sank into bed by 9 p.m. The hum of the air conditioner a steady lullaby. At 3 a.m., I jolted awake, my body locked in the grip of sleep paralysis, a curse I'd lived with since childhood. Have you ever been trapped, your mind racing while your body betrays you? I lay on my side, my chest tight, my eyes straining against the darkness. Then I saw her, a woman sitting on the couch, her form stark against the faint glow of streetlight, seeping through the curtains. Picture her, a figure in a flowing white gown, her posture so perfect it feels unnatural, her long hair straight as a blade, She didn't move, didn't blink, just sat there, her presence a silent weight that pressed against my lungs. Feel your heart pound, the air growing thick with dread. Her gown shimmered with an eerie luminescence, not from light, but from something beyond this world. Her stillness was suffocating, as if she existed in a space between life and death, watching me with eyes I couldn't see but felt. What if she's been there all along, waiting for you to notice? I wanted to break free, to scream, but fear held me captive. The thought of moving, of making myself known to her, sent a shiver down my spine. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying for escape, fall into the void, hoping it's just a dream. When I opened my eyes at 6 a.m., sunlight flooded the room, chasing away the shadows. Breathe, believing it's over. But the memory of her lingered, sharp and unyielding. I sat up, my gaze darting. To the couch, my stomach dropped. Look closer, see the truth. My backpack, neatly placed the night before, was pushed to one side. The cushions rearranged as if someone had made space to sit. The seat where she'd been was sunken, the fabric creased in a way that felt too fresh, too deliberate. Touch it, feel the lingering warmth, the proof of something impossible. I checked the door, locked, the windows sealed. No one could have entered, yet the evidence was undeniable. I went to the front desk, my hands trembling as I asked Emma if anyone had reported strange occurrences in room 214. Hear her hesitate, her voice barely above a whisper. She paused, then told me about a guest named Ryan, who'd stayed there months ago. He'd woken to find his belongings moved, a faint outline on the couch, and a lingering scent of lilies that had no source. Smell it now, faint but haunting, clinging to the air. Emma insisted the hotel had no history of break-ins, but her eyes betrayed her. She knew more than she was saying. What secrets was she keeping? I left that hotel, but the image of the woman follows me. Close your eyes, but see her still, sitting in perfect silence. Was she a ghost, a trick of my mind, or something darker? The sunken cushion, the moved belongings, they're proof something was there. Walk away, but feel her gaze waiting for the next sleepless night. The heat was suffocating, like the night itself was pressing down on me, daring me to move. I was 13, restless, trapped in the sticky summer air of our one-story house on a sleepy street where nothing ever happened. Or so I thought. My name's Caleb, and that night something found me. Something that still claws at the edges of my dreams, blurring the line between what's real and what shouldn't be. Our house was ordinary, the kind with peeling paint, and a front veranda overgrown with potted ferns and ivy. My bedroom faced that veranda, its windows always open to catch any hint of a breeze. Across the hall was a spare room we called the study, cluttered with an old TV, a desk, and stacks of my dad's fishing magazines. That night the heat was unbearable, so I'd left the study door ajar, the thin screen door pulled across to keep out bugs. It felt safe, like nothing could touch me in my own home. But safety is a fragile thing, isn't it? I couldn't sleep. The ceiling fan spun lazily, doing little to stir the thick air. I lay on my bed, staring at the shadows dancing on the ceiling, my mind drifting to a story my cousin told me years ago. He'd sworn he saw something in the woods behind his house. A thing with no face, moving like it didn't belong to this world. I'd laughed it off then, called him a liar. But that night, as the house settled into silence, his words crept back, heavy and uninvited. Then I heard it. A faint crunch, like footsteps on the veranda's pebbled concrete. The sound was deliberate, uneven, as if whatever was out there was dragging itself forward. My heart stuttered, but I told myself it was just Mom or Dad, maybe checking the plants. People don't wander onto verandas at midnight, right? I propped myself up, peering toward the open window. The curtains swayed faintly, but the street beyond was dark, the streetlights barely piercing the night. That's when I saw it. A shape, hunched and skeletal, slinking across the veranda. It was tall but bent, its limbs impossibly thin like branches stripped of leaves. Its movements were slow, jerky, as if it was testing the ground beneath it. A low, rasping sound followed. A breath, maybe, or something worse. It's not real, Caleb. You're imagining it. But my body didn't believe me. My skin prickled. My throat tightened, and I gripped the edge of my blanket like it could shield me from whatever was out there. The thing paused, its head, if you could call it that, tilting as if searching. It's looking for something, or someone. I wanted to scream, to call for my parents, but my voice was gone, swallowed by the weight of the moment. Then I remembered the study door, the screen door. It's not locked. The realization hit like a punch. That flimsy mesh was all that separated me from whatever was creeping closer, now only a few feet from my window. Move, Caleb. You have to move. I slid off the bed, my bare feet cold against the floor, and crawled toward the hall. Every sound felt amplified. The creak of the floorboards, the thud of my own heartbeat. I reached the study, my hand trembling as I grasped the doorframe. But then I froze. To close the door, I'd have to pull the screen open first. It's out there, it's right there. I peeked around the corner, and my blood turned to ice. The thing was at my bedroom window, its hunched form pressed against the glass. Its face, or lack of one, was a sickly gray, stretched tight over bone, with hollow sockets where eyes should have been. It's not human. It can't be. The rasping grew louder, a guttural hiss that seemed to crawl inside my skull. I held, my breath praying it couldn't see me. But then it turned, slow and deliberate, and shuffled toward the study door. It knows I'm here. I flattened myself against the floor, my cheek pressed to the cool tiles. The thing bent down, its face inches from the screen. Breathe, Caleb, don't breathe. Its hollow socket seemed to bore into me, searching, hungry. The air grew heavy, thick with the stench of decay, like something long dead had clawed its way back. I was paralyzed, trapped in its gaze until, suddenly, it changed. Its mouth stretched wide, a gaping maw, and its sockets flared with something like fear. A piercing, inhuman cry tore through the night, sharp enough to shatter my thoughts. Then it was gone, scrambling into the darkness like a hunted animal. I lay there shaking, listening for any sign it was still out there. It's gone. It has to be gone. When I finally dared to move, I yanked the screen open, slammed the door shut, and locked it. Back in my room, I closed the windows, drew the curtains, and sat against the wall, my eyes fixed on the door. It didn't come back, but it could have. Years later, I still see it in my dreams. I've never told anyone, not my parents, not my friends. How do you explain something like that? A monster that wasn't a monster, a thing that seemed as scared of me as I was of it. I've tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a trick of the light, a fever dream from the heat. But the memory is too sharp, too real. And that cry, it wasn't just fear. It was something older, something that didn't belong here. Whatever it was, it found me that night, and I'm afraid it might find me again. The night stretched endless before her, a ribbon of asphalt swallowed by darkness. Lila gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles pale against the worn leather, as she navigated the winding back roads of rural Virginia. At 23, she was used to Late-night drives, but tonight felt different. She'd just dropped her father at the airport for a red-eye flight, and the 3-hour journey home loomed like a test she hadn't studied for. The radio hissed static, its signal lost miles ago, leaving only the hum of her mother's old sedan and the occasional flicker of her headlights on the trees lining the highway. No streetlights, no other cars. Just her, alone in a world that seemed to hold its breath. The road curved sharply, forcing her to slow down, her tires crunching on loose gravel. She glanced at the GPS, its robotic voice her only companion, when a sudden glare flooded her rearview mirror. Headlights, high and unyielding, materialized from nowhere, so close they seemed to press against her bumper. Her heart lurched. Where did they come from? The vehicle, a sleek black SUV, hovered, inches from her car, its presence aggressive, almost predatory. Lila's pulse quickened, but she kept her speed steady, hoping they'd pass. They didn't. Instead, blue lights flashed, slicing through the night like a warning. A police cruiser. Relief washed over her, then curdled into unease. Why hadn't she noticed the markings before? She scanned the road for a safe place to pull over, but the highway offered no mercy, only dense woods and narrow shoulders. After a tense minute, she spotted a faint glow from a distant gas station and eased onto the gravelly edge, her car shuddering to a stop. The cruiser parked behind her, its lights still flashing, casting eerie shadows across the trees. Lila kept her hands on the wheel, her mother's voice echoing in her mind. Stay calm. Be polite. The officer approached, his silhouette tall and angular against the glare. His face was half hidden by the brim of his hat, but his voice cut through the night, sharp and hurried. "Ma'am, did you know your tags are expired?" Lila frowned, her stomach twisting. "That's not right. My mom's car is up to date." She'd seen the registration sticker just last week, valid for 2 more months. The officer's eyes glinted, unreadable as he pressed on, his words tumbling out too fast, like a script he hadn't rehearsed. "Step out of the vehicle, please. I need to see your license." Step out? Her skin prickled. Something was wrong. His tone, his urgency, the way he stood too close, blocking her door. Before she could respond, his radio crackled, a garbled voice pulling his attention. He muttered something, then bolted back to his cruiser, tires screeching, as he sped into the night. Lila sat frozen, her breath shallow, the silence louder than the engine's hum. What just happened? She locked her doors, her hands trembling, and pulled back onto the highway, the gas station's faint light fading in her mirror. The road felt different now, as if it were watching her, waiting for her to make a mistake. She drove faster than she should, her mind replaying the encounter. His voice too rushed, his badge barely visible, the blue lights too bright, almost theatrical. By the time she reached home, dawn was breaking, painting the sky a sickly gray and mauve. The driveway, she checked the car's tags. The sticker glared back unexpired, just as she'd known. Her chest tightened. He lied. The realization sank in like a stone. That wasn't a cop, not a real one. She stood there, the morning air cold against her skin, imagining what might have happened if she'd stepped out of the car, if she'd followed his command into the dark. What did he want? Her mind conjured images of news headlines, missing women, abandoned cars, bodies found in ditches. She'd escaped, but the weight of that near miss clung to her, heavy and unshakable. Lila never told anyone, not her mother, not her friends. The fear was too raw, too personal, like admitting it would make it real. She changed her habits, avoiding back roads, pulling over only in crowded lots, her phone always ready to dial 911. But at night, when she closed her eyes, she saw those blue lights felt that voice pressing against her, urging her to obey. The highway wasn't just a road anymore. It was a trap, and she'd walked its edge without falling. What if your sanctuary harbors a stranger who never speaks? Imagine a house by the sea, its windows framing endless waves, a haven for rest and renewal. For Serafina, that haven turned predator the moment she crossed its threshold on Isle of Palms, South Carolina, in September 2023. The air wasn't salty and free. It was heavy, thick with an unseen presence that pressed against her skin, whispering secrets older than the tides. Serafina, 22, arrived at the rental home with her mother Cassandra and grandmother Isadora, seeking solace after a grueling year. A fever had sapped her strength, blurring her days into a haze of exhaustion. The house stood proud, its white walls gleaming under the midday sun, glass doors catching the Atlantic's shimmer. But as they stepped inside, a door swung shut with a force that rattled the frame, nearly pinning Isadora's trembling hand. Cassandra chuckled, blaming a draft, but Sarah's chest tightened. Feel that moment. The jolt of something alive in the stillness, masked by laughter. The house felt wrong, its polished floors and airy rooms hiding a pulse that wasn't theirs. That night the house came alive. As the family slept, doors stirred, their hinges groaning in the dark. Sarah's bedroom, shared with Cassandra, bore the worst. Its door, locked each night to muffle her restless tossing, would spring open, revealing a hallway bathed in moonlight. Close your eyes and hear it, the slow creak of wood, the silence that dares you to look. Sierra, her fever spiking, lay awake, the ocean's rhythm drowned by her racing pulse. One night she watched the door fling itself wide, its frame quivering as if pushed by invisible hands. She stumbled from bed, her hands slick with sweat, and forced it shut, only for it to reopen an hour later, the hallway's shadows deeper, hungrier. Imagine the dread, knowing something waits just beyond your reach, its gaze colder than the sea. Cassandra, ever practical, dismissed it as faulty mechanics, but her eyes betrayed doubt. She'd seen it too, a door in Isadora's room inching open, halting under her stare. Isadora, her voice frail, spoke of coastal spirits, souls lost to shipwrecks or buried in forgotten sands. Drift into her story. A sailor's widow, her cries swallowed by storms, forever seeking her lost love. Sarah, a skeptic, clung to reason. Drafts warped wood, her fevered mind. But the house mocked her logic. Doors throughout the home stirred, their movements deliberate, as if testing the family's resolve. The kitchen door would ease open, revealing only darkness. The patio door would shudder, its glass reflecting nothing but stars. Each night, Sarah's sleep dwindled, her body aching under the weight of unseen eyes. By the fifth day, exhaustion overwhelmed her. After a heavy dinner of shrimp and wine, the family headed to the beach, their laughter fading into the surf. Sarah stayed behind, craving sleep. The house fell silent, the only sound the distant crash of waves against the shore. She climbed into her twin bed, pulling a blanket over her head to block the midday sun. Sink into that moment, the warmth of the blanket, the quiet too perfect to trust. Her fever burned, her thoughts swimming, but the bed was her refuge. Then, it shifted. A distinct pressure pressed into the mattress like someone sitting beside her, hands resting on either side. Feel it now, the weight of an unseen body, its presence stealing your breath. It was light, delicate, like a small woman. But no one was there. Sarah's heart pounded, her body frozen under the blanket. The presence didn't move, didn't speak, its silence a scream that filled the room. What would you do trapped in that moment knowing you're not alone? Time stretched, each second an eternity. The air grew thick, heavy with the scent of salt and something older. Decay, perhaps, or the musk of forgotten graves. Sarah's fever blurred her senses, but the weight was real, its edges sharp against her awareness. She wanted to scream, to throw off the blanket, but fear pinned her in place. Picture it, your body betraying you, your mind screaming to flee, but the weight holds you captive. Minutes passed, or hours, she couldn't tell. Then, as suddenly as it came, the pressure lifted, leaving the bed cold, the air lighter. Sarah's breath returned, ragged and shallow. Her fever surged, her vision swimming with spots, but she forced herself to sleep, as if surrender could erase the violation. When she woke, the house was still, the sun lower, casting long shadows across the floor. Cassandra and Isadora returned, their voices bright with tales of seashells and waves. Sarah said nothing, the memory of the weight a stone in her chest. Their laughter grated, oblivious to the house's secret. That night, as she lay awake, she noticed something new, a faint mark on the doorframe like a handprint smudged in salt. It wasn't there before, or had she missed it? See it now, the trace of something that touched your world, its intent unknown. She wiped it away, her fingers trembling, but the mark lingered in her mind. Cassandra later shared a story from their first night. She'd woken to a sound, a soft hum, like a lullaby, drifting from the hallway. She followed it, her bare feet, cold on the floor, only to find the door to Sarah's room open, the hum gone. She'd dismissed it as a dream, but the memory unsettled her. Isadora, too, had felt it, a chill in her room, a whisper of her name in the dark. What lingers in the places we call home, its voice a shadow of our own. The family left the house. Days later, but its weight followed Sarah. Her fever faded, but sleep never came easily again. Back home, Sarah researched the house, digging through local records. Whispers of a tragedy surfaced. A woman, lost to a storm decades ago, her body never found, her home razed to build the rental. Was she the presence? Her touch light but unyielding? Sarah, still skeptical, couldn't shake the thought. The house was a trap, its doors portals to something restless, its beds a stage for silent visitors. Tonight, as you lie in your own bed, listen closely. What weight presses against you in the dark? Every step I took through that dark forest felt like a whisper from something unseen, something wearing my face. This is a story of a journey that turned into a haunting riddle, a shadow of myself I can't explain. Take a moment and imagine walking alone at night, the silence so deep it feels alive watching you. It began with love, but ended with a fear that still chills my blood. Years ago, I was in a long-distance relationship with my boyfriend, Daniel, who lived in a remote province surrounded by dense forests. Every other weekend I'd travel to his hometown, a grueling 2-hour trip to the station, followed by another 2 hours on foot to his house, unless a car was available, which cut the walk to 15 minutes. Feel the ache in your legs, the weight of a journey that stretches into the night. The town was isolated, its stores and diners a long trek through a narrow road carved through the forest, a path meant for cars but often empty. I'd arrive late, around 8 p.m., the sky pitch black, armed with only a flashlight to guide me. See the beam of light cutting through the dark, the trees looming like silent sentinels. The forest was unnervingly quiet. No hum of insects, no chirping birds, just the echo of my footsteps on the gravel. Listen to the silence, so heavy it presses against your chest. Each night as I walked those 2 hours, a creeping sensation grew. I felt watched. Shadows seemed to shift just beyond my light, but I never turned around, too afraid of what I might see. What if something was there, waiting for you to look? For weeks, I endured those walks, my heart pounding with every rustle of leaves. Every snap of a twig I convinced myself was just the wind. But one weekend things changed. Daniel had a car available and he drove me to the station, the headlights cutting through the forest as we said our goodbyes. Feel the relief of safety, the warmth of his hand in yours. I made it home, exhausted, but grateful to avoid the walk. Hours later, my phone lit up with a call from Daniel, his voice tight with confusion. Hear the tremor in his words, the kind that makes your stomach drop. His relatives, Aunt Clara and Uncle James, who lived near him, had just driven through the forest on their way home. They swore they saw me walking along the road, my silhouette clear under the moonlight. They were furious with Daniel, scolding him for letting me walk alone at night. But Daniel insisted he'd driven me to the station. I was already home miles away. Pause. Feel the air shift, the impossible sinking in. I asked if they might have mistaken me for someone else, but their description was chillingly precise. They described my outfit perfectly. A blue jacket, gray scarf, and black boots. The exact clothes I'd worn that day. Picture yourself in those clothes, standing in a forest you shouldn't be in. They hadn't seen me all weekend, so how could they know? Aunt Clara and Uncle James weren't the type to joke. They were certain it was me. The revelation sent a shiver through me, a cold that settled deep in my bones. What if something out there had taken my form, walking where I should have been? I thought back to those nights in the forest, the feeling of being watched now heavier, more sinister. Daniel admitted the town always felt oppressive to him, the vibe, air thick with a heaviness he couldn't explain. Feel that weight now, pressing down, suffocating. I eventually ended things with him, unable to shake my growing dread of that place. But the memory of my doppelganger lingered, a puzzle with no solution. Another incident from years before only deepened my unease. At school, I was with a group of friends, including Sophie, walking down the stairs to the bathroom. We were chatting, laughing, Sophie right beside me. Or so I thought. When we reached the bathroom, she was gone. We called for her, confused, until she appeared moments later, furious, saying we'd left her in the classroom while she gathered her things. See her face, the hurt in her eyes, the confusion in yours. We swore we'd been talking to her the whole way down, but other classmates confirmed she'd never left the room. What if you'd been talking to a shadow, a copy that wasn't her? I still don't understand what I encountered in that forest, or at school. Close your eyes but feel the forest around you, the shadow wearing your face. Was it a doppelganger, a warning, or something darker? The thought of something out there, mimicking me, sends a chill I can't shake. Walk away but know it might still be watching. Some roads carry more than travelers, they carry warnings. 10 years ago, I drove through the haunted heart of Sleepy Hollow at 3 a.m., where the darkness whispers secrets and the past refuses to rest. What I saw under that lonely stop sign wasn't human. It was a message, one that still haunts my dreams and shadows every step I take. I was 16, reckless and untamed, chasing freedom in the dead of night. Sleepy Hollow, my hometown, was a place woven with legends, tales of headless horsemen and restless spirits that clung to the woods like fog. The old Sleepy Hollow Road was a winding ribbon of asphalt, flanked by dense forests and forgotten carriage trails that led to the cemetery where the town's ghosts were said to roam. It was November, the air sharp with frost, the kind that stung your cheeks and turned your breath to mist. I sat in the passenger seat of my boyfriend's car, the radio humming softly, the world beyond the windows a sea of black. We were heading home, the hour late, the road empty save for the occasional flicker of a distant house light. The stop sign at Sleepy Hollow Road was a solitary marker, lit by a single street lamp that cast a harsh, clinical glow. As we slowed to a stop, my heart lurched. There she was. A woman stood on the edge of the road, inches from the sign, her long white gown fluttering in a breeze I couldn't feel. She was pale, impossibly pale, her skin almost translucent under the lamp's glare. Her dark hair hung in heavy strands, framing a face that refused to meet our gaze. She didn't move, didn't blink, her eyes fixed on something beyond us, something we couldn't see. The cold was brutal, yet she wore no shoes, no jacket, her thin dress clinging to her like a shroud. She shouldn't be here. My stomach twisted, a primal fear clawing at my chest. I thought we'd hit her, but she hadn't flinched as the car rolled closer. She was there, solid yet unreal, a figure caught between worlds. I gripped the armrest, my voice barely a whisper. "Did you see that?" My boyfriend nodded, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. We pulled away, the stop sign shrinking in the rearview mirror, but the weight of her presence lingered. What was she doing there? The question gnawed at me, each answer more unsettling than the last. The road was desolate, the nearest house a mile away. No one would stand barefoot in the freezing dark, staring into nothing. Her stillness, her unblinking gaze, it wasn't human. It was as if she'd stepped out of a dream or a nightmare, her existence defying the rules of the world I knew. I glanced back, half expecting to see her following, but the road was empty, the lamp's glow swallowed by the night. Sleep eluded me for weeks. My room on the ground floor of my parents' house faced those woods, and every rustle of leaves felt like her approach. I'd lie awake, the memory of her pale face burning in my mind, her gaze piercing through me even in the dark. My boyfriend, and I barely spoke of it, as if naming her would summon her back. Years later, I asked him if it was real, if we'd truly seen her. His face paled, and he nodded, his voice low. It happened. That was all he said, but it was enough. The truth settled like a stone in my chest. We'd crossed paths with something beyond explanation. I began to search for answers, diving into the lore of Sleepy Hollow. The tales were endless, women in white, specters of betrayal and loss, haunting roads and woods across cultures. One story spoke of a colonial woman, hiding from a violent suitor, only to perish in the cold. Another told of a Native American girl, killed by a jealous lover, her spirit bound to the land. A teenager, pushed from a car during an argument, left to wander the roads. Each tale carried the same thread: betrayal, love turned to pain. And then I saw it. My boyfriend, my first love, had been betraying me, sleeping with my best friend behind my back. The discovery shattered me, his lies cutting deeper than I thought possible. Later he grew violent, his hands leaving bruises that matched the ache in my heart. Was she a warning? The thought consumed me. Had she stood there, at that stop sign, to show me the truth before it broke me? I left him, rebuilt my life, and now work in a morgue, surrounded by death yet unafraid. But her image lingers. Every time I visit Sleepy Hollow, I drive past that stop sign, my heart racing, half expecting to see her again. In my dreams, she's there, standing in the road, her gaze no longer distant but locked on me, her lips parting as if to speak. She knows me. The woods of Sleepy Hollow hold their secrets tightly, but I can't shake the feeling that she was more than a ghost. She was a mirror reflecting the betrayal I couldn't yet see, a sentinel warning me to run. And I'm terrified she's still waiting, her pale hands reaching for me in the dark. The field stretched out like a sea of whispers, its edges swallowed by the night. I've seen shadows before, fleeting shapes that linger in the corners of your vision, gone when you turn to look. They've followed me for years, harmless, like ghosts of forgotten thoughts. But 2 weeks ago, something changed. Something found us, and it wasn't just a shadow. It was alive, and it was hungry. My name's Nora, and I live with my partner Liam in a quiet house on the edge of a small town. Beyond our backyard lies a field, vast and untamed, bordered by a tangle of trees that seem to guard secrets older than the town itself. Liam's always been the skeptic, rolling his eyes when I talk about the things I've seen. "It's just your imagination," he'd say, laughing. But that night, his laughter died, and so did his disbelief. It started with Liam and our dog, Finn. It was 1 a.m, the kind of hour where the world feels too still, too watchful. Liam took Finn out to the field, a routine walk under a moonless sky. As they crossed the grass, Liam noticed a figure to his right, half hidden in the shadows. Just a kid, probably sneaking a smoke, he thought, brushing it off. But Finn froze, his ears pinned back, a low growl rumbling in his chest. Liam knelt to clean up after the dog, and that's when he felt it, a prickle on his neck, like eyes boring into him. He glanced up, and the figure was closer, now crouched among the bushes. It wasn't a kid. It was a mass of black, featureless, its outline sharp yet blurred, like ink spilled across the night. It didn't move like a person. It glided, silent. Predatory. Run, Liam. Run now. His heart slammed against his ribs as he grabbed Finn's leash. The thing surged forward, tearing through the undergrowth, keeping pace with them. Branches snapped, but the sound was wrong. Hollow, unnatural, like bones breaking in a void. Finn yanked Liam forward, his paws scrabbling against the earth, and they didn't stop until they stumbled through our back door, breathless and shaking. "It wasn't human," Liam whispered, his face pale. The next day we searched the field. No broken branches, no footprints, no trace of anything. But it had been there. We both knew it. A few nights later, it was my turn. I took Finn out, the field looming under a faint crescent moon. The air felt heavy, oppressive, like it was pressing against my chest. Something's watching. I shook off the thought, but Finn whimpered, his tail tucked. Then I heard it. A rustle, in the bushes, sharp and deliberate. I scanned the ground, expecting a rabbit or a fox, but there was nothing. "Look up, Nora." My eyes drifted to the trees, and there it was. A shadow perched on a branch, its form twisting like smoke. It had no face, no eyes, yet I felt its gaze, cold and unyielding. "Go home," I said, my voice trembling. "You don't belong here." It didn't move, but the air grew colder, thicker. I turned and walked away. Finn pressed against my leg, my heart pounding until we were safe inside. It let me go. But why? The next night, we went together, as if facing it as a pair could make us braver. We were wrong. The field felt alive, pulsing, with a malice that clung to our skin. Halfway across, we both stopped, a shared instinct locking us in place. We're being watched. Without a word, we turned, our eyes drawn to the same spot. A cluster of trees at the field's edge. Nothing was there, yet the feeling was undeniable, a weight that made my stomach churn. It's here. It's always been here. We hurried home, the darkness pressing closer with every step. But the worst came this morning at 4 a.m. I was walking alone, the street quiet except for the hum of a lamppost. A shape darted past, too fast, too fluid. Just someone out late, I told myself, but my gut screamed otherwise. I reached the alley by our house, and there it was, standing under the lamppost, bathed in light yet darker than the night. A humanoid, mass featureless, its presence a void that sucked the warmth from the air. It's not just a shadow, it's evil. I froze, my breath shallow, as it seemed to stare, its lack of a face somehow more terrifying than any expression. The air grew, thick with dread, a suffocating force that made my knees buckle. Walk away, Nora, don't look back. I forced myself to move, each step heavier than the last, until I was inside, the door locked behind me. Let me tell you about another time, years ago, when I was a kid. I'd wander the fields behind my grandparents' farm, chasing fireflies, under the stars. One night I felt it, a presence cold and heavy watching from the trees. I ran home, never telling anyone, but I never went back to those fields alone. That feeling, it's the same one now, only stronger, darker. Liam's not a skeptic anymore. We don't walk Finn at night, but the shadow doesn't need us to come to it. It knows where we live. I've seen shadows before, but this one is different. It's not just watching, it's hunting, and I don't know how to make it stop. What if the one you love is not the one beside you? In the quiet of your home, where every corner holds memories of warmth, a single moment can twist safety into dread. For Ava, that moment came in the darkness of her bedroom, where a familiar figure became a stranger, and the walls of her sanctuary whispered of something sinister. Ava, 28, lived in a modest house with her sister Sophie, 26, their 2 cats, and Sophie's pair of excitable dogs. The rhythm of their lives was predictable. Ava left her bedroom door open, letting her cats slip in and out like silent ghosts, while Sophie locked hers, keeping her dogs close. Liam, Ava's boyfriend, was a constant presence, staying over most nights. He'd rise at 7:45 a.m., slipping out for work without a sound, careful not to disturb Ava's sleep. Picture it now, the hush of a home at dawn, the soft padding of paws, the faint creak of a floorboard under careful steps. He'd navigate the pitch-black room, blackout curtains sealing out the world, and prepare in the hallway, leaving Ava cocooned in dreams. But one spring morning, that routine unraveled, revealing a truth that clawed at the edges of reality. It began with Helen, their mother, arriving early for a shopping trip with Sophie. Ava, a late sleeper, remained in her darkened room, unaware of the day stirring beyond her curtains. Sophie's alarm pierced the silence at 10 a.m., dragging her from bed. As she shuffled toward the bathroom, she paused. Ava's door, always open, was shut tight, its wooden frame a silent barrier. Feel that moment, the prickle of unease, a detail that doesn't belong in the familiar. Sophie frowned, blaming a playful cat, and stepped into the bathroom. When she emerged, the door stood ajar, a sliver of hallway light cutting through the gloom. Bella, her dog, sat rigid in Ava's doorway, eyes fixed on something inside. No eager bark, no scramble to leap onto Ava's bed, a ritual unbroken for 3 years. Imagine the chill as your pet senses what you cannot, its gaze locked on the yo. Sophie called to Bella, her voice sharp with irritation. But the dog remained still, as if bound by an unseen force. Annoyed, she crossed the threshold into Ava's room and froze. In the suffocating darkness, a man sat upright on the bed, inches from Ava's sleeping form. A faint, unnatural glow, like the flicker of a phone screen, clung to him, casting jagged shadows that danced on the walls. See it now. A figure where none should be, its presence a violation of your trust. Sophie's breath caught, her mind racing. It had to be Liam, oversleeping for once. She stammered an apology, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment, and retreated, the image of the glowing figure searing into her memory. In the kitchen, she asked Helen if she'd opened Ava's door. Helen shook her head, her eyes narrowing. No, I didn't touch it. Ava woke at noon, her head heavy, to the murmur of voices. Sophie and Helen sat at the table, their faces taut with questions. Why did Liam go to work late? Sophie demanded, her voice edged with doubt. Ava blinked, confused. He didn't. He leaves at 7:45 always. Sophie's eyes darkened, her words tumbling out. The closed door, the open door, Bella's eerie stillness, the man in the glow. Ava's stomach twisted. Feel the dread creeping in, the realization that your sanctuary has been breached. She called Liam, her fingers trembling. His voice, laced with confusion, confirmed he'd left on time, clocking in at 9 a.m. He sent a photo of his timesheet, the timestamp undeniable. Ava's room had no lamps, no lights. Her phone lay buried under her pillow, untouched. The glow, Sophie described, the figure beside her. It couldn't be Liam. The house, once a haven, felt like a trap. Sophie's voice dropped as she shared a memory from months before. Late one night, Bella had growled at the hallway, her fur bristling. Sophie, half asleep, glimpsed a shadow, too tall, too wrong, hovering just beyond her door. It vanished. When she blinked, but the memory lingered, a warning she'd ignored. What watches you when you sleep? Its form a mockery of those you love. Helen, practical to a fault, suggested a trick of the light, a pillow mistaken for a figure. But her words faltered against Sophie's certainty, the dog's fear, the door's betrayal. Ava began to notice the house's secrets. The cats, once carefree, now hesitated at her doorway, their eyes darting to corners she couldn't see. At night she'd lie awake, the darkness pressing against her skin, every sound amplified, the hum of the refrigerator, the faint rustle of curtains, the soft thud of something moving in the hall. Close your eyes and listen. Is it just the house settling or something else, waiting for you to look? She'd check her phone, its screen dim, and find no source for the glow Sophie described. Yet the memory of that figure haunted her, its silent presence a violation of the bed she shared with Liam. Sophie, too, felt the change. Bella grew restless, her once playful demeanor replaced by wary glances. One evening, as they sat in the living room, the dog froze, her ears pricked toward Ava's room. Sophie followed her gaze, her pulse quickening. The door, left open, seemed to pulse with a faint light. Gone when she blinked. She didn't speak of it, but the fear in her eyes mirrored Ava's. Helen, skeptical but shaken, suggested a priest, a cleansing, anything to restore their peace. Ava resisted, clinging to logic, but doubt gnawed at her. Was it a ghost, a glitch in reality, a shadow cast by her own mind? Weeks passed, but the house never felt the same. Ava moved her bed, rearranged the room, but the weight of that morning lingered. She'd catch herself staring at the door, expecting it to swing open, revealing the figure once more. Liam, unaware of the terror, noticed her unease, his touch no longer enough to anchor her. What do you do when your home becomes a stranger, its shadows wearing the faces of those you love? Ava still sleeps with her door open, the cats her only sentinels. But in the quiet of the night she feels it, a presence glowing softly, waiting to claim its place beside her. In an old house where shadows cling to every corner, I heard a voice that shouldn't have been there. This is a tale of a home haunted by its past, where the echoes of the dead whisper through the walls. Take a deep breath and imagine a creaking house at dusk, where every sound feels like a warning. Began with childhood memories, but turned into a chilling realization that something lingered in the dark. I grew up in a house that felt older than time, its wooden beams sagging under the weight of decades, built sometime before the mid-20th century, though its exact age remained a mystery. Feel the air thick with dust and secrets, as if the house itself is holding its breath. We knew little about its history, but old photos of the place hung in the local doctor's office and dentist's waiting room, their faded frames staring down like silent witnesses. See those photos? The house captured in grainy black and white, its windows dark as empty eyes. My mother told me the previous owner was an elderly man, bedridden and confined to the upstairs room, my sister Hannah's room. The closet had been converted into a bathroom for him, but after he passed away in that very space, it was turned back into a closet. My parents bought the house soon after, unaware of the presence he might have left behind. Picture that room, the faint outline of a bed still pressed into the floorboards, a space that feels heavier than the rest of the house. From the time I was young, the house seemed alive with unexplainable moments. Have you ever felt a chill that wasn't from the cold, a shiver that came from within? I remember playing in the living room at 6 years old, clutching a plastic TIE fighter toy, its sleek wings gleaming under the dim lamp. I sat cross-legged on the rug, lost in my own world, when suddenly the toy tore from my hands, soaring across the room as if yanked by an unseen force. It struck the far wall with a force that echoed in my chest, the impact sharp and deliberate. Feel your heart race, the confusion of a child facing the impossible. I fled to my mother, tears streaming down my face, but even her comforting arms couldn't erase the dread. How could something move on its own in an empty room? What if something had been there, watching you all along? But the most unsettling moment came years later, a memory that still sends a shiver down my spine. My mother worked from home, her desk tucked into the kitchen downstairs, the scent of coffee always lingering in the air. To reach Hannah's room upstairs, she'd have to walk a few steps, climb the creaking staircase, and turn right into the floor. Doorway, hear the stairs groan under each step, the sound a warning in itself. One afternoon, she was on a call with a client, her voice steady as she typed, when a voice cut through the quiet, Hannah's voice, clear and urgent, calling from upstairs. Mom, come upstairs and see," my mother replied, distracted. "I'm working, you have to come down here," the voice called again, insistent, pulling at her attention. "Mom, please, come up." They went back and forth for half a minute, my mother growing frustrated until a realization struck her like ice water. Pause. Feel the air grow cold, the truth dawning. Hannah was at school that day. My mother was home alone. Who had been calling her name? The voice stopped the moment she fell silent, as if it knew she'd understood. Feel the silence now, heavier than before, pressing against your skin. She sat frozen at her desk, her hands trembling. The kitchen suddenly too large, too empty. She never went upstairs that day, too afraid of what might be waiting in Hannah's room. Picture that doorway, the darkness beyond it, a space that once held death. I've heard other strange tales from this house, but that moment clings to me, a shadow I can't shake. A friend named Lily once stayed over and swore she heard footsteps, pacing above us, though no one was there. Hear those steps, slow and deliberate, echoing through the night. Was it the old man, unable to leave the room where he died? Close your eyes, but feel the house around you, its walls whispering secrets. The voice, the toy, the footsteps. They're proof something lingers, watching, waiting for us to answer its call. Some places hold secrets older than the earth itself, and that night, one chose to reveal itself. Noah stood at the threshold of his family's back door, the January cold seeping through his worn jacket, a faint shiver tracing his spine. The 17. He was no stranger to the rhythms of rural life in North Carolina's Triad foothills, where the days bled into nights of quiet routine. The house, a weathered one-story set a football field's length from a twisting back road, crouched under a sky pierced by a sliver of moon. Its siding, peeling like old skin, blended into the darkness, and the windows glowed with the faint warmth of a single lamp. In his left hand, Noah gripped Rusty's metal dog bowl, its edges biting into his palm. In his right, his phone's flashlight carved a trembling path across the frost-dusted grass. Taking Rusty to the lot, a chain-link enclosure tucked where the yard met the forest, was a chore he'd done since he was 12. But tonight, the air felt charged, as if the world were holding its breath, waiting for him to step into its trap. The lot lay 100 feet from the house, where the lawn sloped into a tangle of underbrush and towering pines. Noah had grown up in these woods, his childhood a tapestry of adventures. Fishing in the pond out back, tracking deer with his stepfather, collecting arrowheads glinting in the dirt. He knew the land's pulse, the chatter of squirrels, the fleeting shadows of foxes, the low growl of possums caught in Rusty's jaws. His stepfather, a man of few words but sharp instincts, had taught him to read the forest like a book, to sense when something was off. Tonight, as Noah crossed the yard, Rusty padding beside him, that lesson echoed in his bones. The forest was too still, its silence not the calm of winter but a void, as if every creature had fled or fallen silent under some unseen gaze. Just the cold, messing with you, he thought, but his pulse quickened, urging him to hurry. Rusty, usually a bundle of energy, was subdued, his ears twitching toward the trees, his tail low. Noah's flashlight swept the lot's perimeter, catching the glint of the fence. He was halfway there when a weight settled in his chest, heavy and unnameable, like a hand pressing against his ribs. He stopped, his breath fogging in the air, and listened. Nothing. No crickets, no distant owls, no rustle of leaves. The silence was a living thing, wrapping around him, squeezing. He tightened his grip on the bowl, its cold metal grounding him, and forced his feet to move. Rusty whimpered, a sound so soft it barely reached Noah's ears, but it was enough to make him glance back. The house seemed farther away than it should, its light dimmer, as if the night were swallowing it whole. Then he saw them. Two white eyes, glowing like shards of moonlight, stared from the forest's edge, 3 feet above the ground. They weren't the reflective glint of a raccoon or the nervous flicker of a deer. These were steady, unblinking, burning with a cold intelligence that rooted Noah to the spot. His heart slammed against his ribs, a frantic rhythm that drowned out his thoughts. The bowl slipped from his hand, striking the concrete with a metallic crash that should have shattered the night. Rusty froze, ears flat, but the eyes didn't flinch. They watched, deliberate, as if they'd been waiting for him, as if they'd always known he'd come. Noah's mind scrambled for answers. A bobcat? A bear? But the height was wrong, the silence unnatural. These weren't the eyes of an animal. They were something else, something that didn't belong in the world he knew. He shouted for Rusty, his voice splintering the stillness, and bolted for the house, the dog's paws pounding behind him. The cold air burned his lungs, his flashlight, beam jerking wildly, catching glimpses of trees that seemed to lean closer, their branches clawing at the sky. He slammed the door, his chest heaving, and blurted to his mother, "There's something out there. I'm not going back." She was in the kitchen, her hands buried in dishwater, her face etched with the exhaustion of a long day. "It's a deer, Noah," she said, her tone dismissive. "You're letting the dark get to you." But the tremor in his eyes, the way his hands shook as he set the phone down, must have pierced her certainty. She dried her hands, her movement slow, and grabbed a flashlight. "Fine, we'll check together." The night air stung as they stepped out, Rusty trailing close, his tail tucked. Noah's beam found the lot, then the slope beyond, where the forest thickened into a wall of shadow. The eyes were still there, unchanged, glowing with that same eerie calm. His mother's breath hitched, her grip tightening on his arm. "That's no deer," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The flashlight trembled in her hand, its beam wavering, but the eyes held steady, unmoved by their presence. Noah felt a chill deeper than the winter cold, a certainty that whatever watched them wasn't just curious, it was waiting. They retreated, her fear a mirror to his own, and burst into the house, waking his stepfather. A hunter with a skepticism honed by years in the wild, his stepfather scoffed at their panic. "You're both jumping at shadows," he grunted. But he grabbed his rifle and a heavy-duty flashlight, its beam cutting through the dark like a blade. "Stay behind me," he ordered, leading them back to the lot. The air was colder now, the silence heavier, as if the forest were holding its secrets close. At the forest's edge, he shouted, "Hey!" His light locked onto the eyes, and for a fleeting moment Noah saw it, a shape tall and fluid, its outline blurring like smoke. It wasn't a man, not quite, but it moved with purpose, sliding sideways along the tree line, never breaking eye contact. Its form seemed to shimmer, as if it were both here and not, a shadow given weight. Then it was gone, swallowed by the woods without a sound. No rustling leaves, no snapping twigs, just an absence that felt heavier than its presence. Noah's stepfather lowered the rifle, his jaw tight. "Mountain lion," he muttered, but his eyes betrayed doubt, darting to the trees as if expecting the thing to return. They trudged back to the house, the silence between them thick with unspoken questions. Noah didn't sleep that night, his mind replaying those eyes, their gaze etched into his bones. He saw them when he closed his eyes, felt them watching from the dark corners of his room. The house, once a haven, felt exposed, its walls too thin to keep out whatever lurked beyond. The days that followed, the forest became a boundary Noah feared to cross. He rushed his chores in daylight, avoiding the lot after dusk. His mother stopped dismissing his fears, her glances toward the woods wary, her hands lingering on the door's lock. His stepfather never spoke of it again, but Noah noticed him, checking the rifle more often, his movements deliberate, as if preparing for a threat he couldn't name. Rusty, too, was changed, his usual barking silenced, his eyes fixed on the tree line as if he saw something Noah couldn't. The land itself seemed to hold clues Noah had overlooked. Half a mile from the lot, near the pond where he'd fished, as a kid he'd found weathered stones, their surfaces carved with precise ancient lines, runes or symbols, too old to be the work of vandals. He'd dismissed them as curiosities, but now they felt like markers, warnings of a presence older than his family's claim to the land. In a clearing by the pond, he'd stumbled on piles of fish and snake bones, neatly arranged, their heads missing, as if offered to something unseen. The memory of the crow's head, impaled on a fence post at the property's edge, haunted him most, its beak frozen in a silent scream, its eyes glassy under the summer sun. His grandfather had once said such things kept pests away, but there was no garden here, no reason for the grisly display. What was it meant to ward off? Noah's stepfather had once joked that the land was an Indian burial ground, a throwaway line that now felt like a half-truth. Noah's research turned up little. North Carolina's native tribes rarely used headstones, their burials marked by subtler signs. But the arrowheads they'd found, the strange vibes by the pond, the bones, the crow, all pointed to something older, something that didn't welcome outsiders. He scoured forums, asked hunters at the local diner, but no one in their tight-knit community had seen anything like it. Bears were rare, mountain lions a myth in these parts, and nothing explained the silence, the fluid movement, the unrelenting gaze. He thought of Old Man Carver, a neighbor who'd lived on the land longer than Noah's family. Years ago, over a shared bottle of whiskey, Carver had told Noah's stepfather a story, a tale of the Watchers, beings said to guard sacred grounds. They weren't ghosts, not exactly, but something older, tied to the earth itself. They don't hunt you, Carver had said, his voice low. They watch, and if you trespass, they make sure you know. Noah had laughed it off then, a kid dismissing an old man's ramblings. Now the story clung to him, its weight growing with every shadow that moved in the woods. Years passed, but Noah never shook the feeling of being watched. He checked the tree line before stepping outside, his flashlight a talisman against the dark. He never saw those eyes again, but he felt them, a pressure in the shadows, a reminder that the forest wasn't his. It belonged to something ancient, something that had spared him only because it chose to. The stones, the bones, the crow, they weren't warnings for him alone. They were for anyone who dared to call this land home. Home is supposed to be safe, a sanctuary where love lingers in every corner. But that night, my grandmother's house became a place of shadows, where something wore her face and breathed a darkness that choked us all. What we found in that pitch-black house wasn't family. It was a lie, and it's still out there waiting for us to return. The evening started with worry. My grandmother hadn't answered her phone for days, her silence a heavy weight on our family. My mother decided we'd drive to her house, a modest bungalow nestled in a quiet suburb, its porch usually warm with light. I sat in the back seat, with my brothers, the car's radio humming softly as we pulled into her driveway. The moment we arrived, a sour taste flooded my mouth, a primal warning I couldn't shake. Something was wrong. The porch was littered with thousands of broken nutshells, scattered like the remnants of some strange ritual. Her house, always aglow after dark, was swallowed by darkness. No lights, no open blinds, just an oppressive void. The sight twisted my stomach, a dread so deep it felt like the air itself was poisoned. My mother turned off the radio, her voice sharp. "Stay in the car." I didn't argue. The house radiated a malevolence I'd never felt before, as if it were alive, watching us. She approached the front door, her footsteps crunching on the nutshells, and tried the screen door. It was locked. She knocked, her fist heavy, like a police officer demanding entry. The inner door swung open instantly, as if someone had been standing just behind it, waiting. That's not right. My grandmother appeared in the doorway, but she was different, taller, her silhouette stretched unnaturally in the dim light. My mother hesitated, then stepped inside, the door closing behind her with a finality that sent chills down my spine. My brother and I exchanged a glance, our shared fear unspoken. The house felt evil. We sat in silence, the minutes crawling by, each second amplifying the dread that gripped us. I stared at the dark windows, half expecting to see her face, or something else, peering out. My mind screamed for my mother to come back, to escape whatever was inside. Finally, she burst out, her face a mask of anger and fear. She climbed into the car, slammed the door, and sped away, the tires kicking up gravel. The tension was suffocating. We thought she was mad, but then she started crying, her sobs jagged and raw. "What happened?" I asked, my voice trembling. She didn't answer at first, her hands shaking on the wheel. When she spoke, her words were a confession, each one heavier than the last. "There were no lights," she said. "Not a single one. The house was pitch black, yet my grandmother moved through it with ease, gliding through the archway to the living room without touching the walls. She had bad hips, always clumsy, always needing support. But not that night. She stood in the center of the room, her arms folded neatly, her posture too perfect, too still. My mother tried to turn on a lamp, but the bulbs were dead. Everyone. The air should have reeked of cat urine. Her 3 cats and neglected litter box were a constant, but there was no trace of it. Instead, the house was filled with an overpowering scent of flowers, lilies, lilacs, lavender, thick and unnatural, like a funeral parlor. That wasn't her. My mother's voice broke as she described the figure in the dark, its eyes glinting in a way that felt wrong, as if they saw through her, into her soul. We drove in silence, the weight of her words sinking in. Who was that? The woman in the house wore my grandmother's face, but everything else was a lie. Her height, her movements, the scent that didn't belong. Was it a spirit, a doppelgänger, something older and hungrier? The nutshells on the porch, the darkened house, the floral scent, they felt like pieces of a ritual, a trap we'd narrowly escaped. When we called my grandmother later, she was fine, confused by our panic, insisting she'd been home all night. But I saw the doubt in my mother's eyes. She didn't believe it was her mother she'd met. We haven't gone back since. The house sits empty now, or so we're told, but I dream of it. In my sleep, I'm standing on that porch, the nutshells crunching underfoot, the floral scent choking me. A figure stands in the doorway, taller than it should be, its eyes glinting in the dark. It doesn't speak, but I feel its invitation, a pull to step inside. It knows we'll return. My mother avoids the subject, but I see her flinch at the scent of lilies. Whatever was in that house wasn't my grandmother, and it's still there, waiting in the dark, its false face ready to greet us again. The park was supposed to be safe, a place of laughter and sunlight, but some shadows hide in plain sight. My childhood is a fractured mirror, reflecting only fragments of a life I can't fully recall. Trauma locked those years away. But now, at 21, the pieces are forcing their way back, jagged and cruel. One memory, sharper than the rest, claws at me in the dead of night. A moment I didn't understand as a child, but now it's a truth that burns. This isn't a tale of ghosts. It's the kind of horror that wears a human face, and it's real. Up until I was 12, my past was a fog, a blur of moments I couldn't grasp. But lately, memories have been slipping through, vivid and unrelenting. I'd give anything to forget them. One day when I was 6 or 7 stands out, etched in my mind like a scar. It was an afternoon in Oak Ridge Park, a sprawl of green fields and dusty paths where kids kicked soccer balls and families spread picnic blankets under ancient oaks. The sun hung low, casting golden light, but the air felt thick, like a storm was holding its breath. I was with my Uncle Henry and Cousin Miles, who trailed behind, lost in slow, grown-up talk. Impatient, I skipped ahead, my sneakers kicking up dirt, unaware of the danger waiting just beyond the curve. It didn't belong there. A shack, pieced together from rusted metal sheets and a sagging garden gate, squatted at the edge of the path. Its door hung open, revealing a chaos of blankets, a stained mattress and scattered junk inside. I slowed, curiosity pulling me closer, but a knot tightened in my chest, a warning I couldn't name. Keep walking. Then a sound cut through the cicada's hum, a low, sharp call like a bird but wrong. My eyes darted to the shack, and there he was, slouched in the shadows. A man, thin as a skeleton, his skin dark and worn, hair tangled into knots. His clothes were rags and a cigarette glowed between his lips, smoke curling upward. "Hey, little girl," he said, his voice slick, too smooth. "Come over here. I got something for you." His eyes gleamed with something dark, something that made my stomach twist. I froze, my feet glued to the path. "Don't talk to strangers." My parents' words surged forward, a shield against the fear creeping up my spine. He leaned closer, his grin showing yellowed teeth. "Come on, it'll be fun, just you and me." The words carried a weight I didn't understand, but my body screamed to flee. I stepped back, and his smile vanished, his face twisting into anger. "Don't be like that," he spat, his tone sharp, venomous. He stood, tossing the cigarette, and moved toward the gate, his steps heavy, deliberate. "Run. Run now." My legs refused to move, my heart pounding like a trapped animal. He pushed the gate open, his eyes locked on me, and I wanted to scream, but my voice was gone. Then gravel crunched behind me. Henry and Miles catching up, their voices shattering. The moment. "Ava, slow down," Henry called, unaware. The man stopped, his gaze flicking to them. He muttered something bitter, then retreated into the shack, the gate slamming shut. He couldn't touch me, not with them there. I grabbed Henry's hand, trembling, but I didn't tell him. How could I explain? We walked home, the park fading, into the distance, and I buried the memory, sealing it away with the rest of my fractured childhood. It was just a strange man, nothing more. For years, I believed that. But last week, my mom's words broke the seal. That vagrant by the school died, she said, relief in her voice. Good riddance, he hurt a lot of girls back then. My blood ran cold. What vagrant, I asked, though I knew. She described the shack, the park, the school across the street. It was him. There was another day when I was 8. I was back, at Oak Ridge, chasing friends in a game of tag, laughing under the trees. A man watched us from the shadows, but I ran on, carefree. Was it him? Was he always there, waiting? The thought is a violation, a stain I can't wash away. I pressed my mom for details, needing to be sure. It was him. He'd preyed on girls my age, girls who didn't escape. If Henry had been slower, if I'd been alone. Now I check the locks twice before bed. He's dead, but he's not gone. His shadow lingers, woven into the memories that keep resurfacing. I was so close to being his victim. Oak Ridge, once my playground, is now a graveyard of what might have been. Some truths don't let you go, no matter how deep you bury them. The memory strikes like a blade in the dark. A fleeting moment in a bedroom, where the air turned cold and the man she loved became a stranger. Vespera's fingers tremble even now, years later, as she recalls that autumn evening, when the walls of her sanctuary betrayed her. The stars she gazed at, the pillow she shifted, the lamp she lit, all secrets she kept in the quiet of her heart. Yet he knew them, as if he'd slipped inside her soul. Vespera, 24, met Damien through a dating app, their connection igniting across the hour's drive between their towns. Their first call stretched into dawn, weaving a tapestry of shared passions, poetry, stargazing, the scent of rain-soaked earth. Sink into that warmth, a voice that feels like home, promising eternity in every word. Within weeks, they were entwined, Damien's intensity drawing her like a moth to flame. His eyes, deep and unreadable, held a hunger she mistook for devotion. For a month, their romance burned bright, but shadows lurked beneath his charm, waiting to surface. It was a chilly October, dusk when they stopped at Vespera's apartment, perched on the second floor above a tangle of forest. She needed to pack for a weekend at Damien's, her suitcase open on the bed. As she sorted clothes, she caught him studying her room, his gaze tracing the window's frame, the lamp's curve, the pillow's place. Feel the air thicken, the silence pressing against your skin like a warning. The room, once her refuge, felt exposed, its corners alive with his scrutiny. Then his voice sliced through, low and precise. "Last night, Vespera, did you move your pillow to the bed, Zay? Foot? Raise the blinds to watch the stars through that window. I'd wager you used that lamp, the one by the mirror, more than the others. It's the one I'd pick." Hear those words, each one a violation, stripping away your privacy. Vespera froze, her breath caught in her throat, the scarf in her hands falling to the floor. He'd described her night, shifting the pillow, opening the blinds, lighting the mirror's lamp. Acts she'd done alone, for the first time, under the cover of darkness. Imagine the terror, your secrets laid bare by someone who shouldn't. "No." "How do you know that?" she stammered, her voice a fragile thread. Damien's smile was a blade, sharp and fleeting, before he brushed it off, muttering about the weekend's plans. His evasion only deepened the chill, the room's walls closing in, as if they'd conspired against her. The drive to Damien's was a haze of forced calm. Vespera's mind spiraled, dissecting his words, seeking reason. Had he watched her? Guessed? Something unnatural? Drift into that dread. Every smile he offers, every glance now a mask for something sinister. She played the part of the carefree girlfriend, but her thoughts churned. Back home, she scoured her room, tearing through drawers, checking corners. For cameras, wires, anything. The walls were bare, no laptops, no TVs, no devices to hack. Her phone had rested on the nightstand, its camera useless. From the forest below, her high window was shielded by ancient oaks, their branches a fortress against prying eyes. What pierces the barriers of your solitude, seeing what no one should? Damien's true nature emerged soon after. The man who'd seemed her mirror turned cold, his words laced with control, his gaze a leash. Recall their first call. Too perfect, as if he'd crafted himself to fit her dreams. Vespera ended it, severing contact, but his knowledge haunted her. A friend's story echoed in her mind, a date who knew her routines, her favorite paths, details she'd never shared. The friend had fled, plagued by the same question. How? What if some minds reach beyond the physical, their sight a power you can't escape? Vespera moved, her new home far from the forest's whisper, but the fear lingered. She'd pause at windows, avoid starlit nights, unplug her lamps. The memory of Damien's voice, reciting her secrets, was a weight she couldn't shed. As you sit in your own space tonight, feel the stillness. Whose eyes are watching, knowing what you hide? The scent of garlic and onions filled the trailer, a promise of comfort in a world of cold nights. Ava stirred the pot on the stove, the sizzle of vegetables a quiet rhythm in the dim kitchen. It was late November 2021, and the trailer she now called home with Ethan hummed with the familiarity of routine. The Virginia countryside stretched beyond the windows, a sea of frost-kissed fields under a starless sky. The trailer, with its worn linoleum and creaking walls, was older than she was, its corners soft with age. She'd moved in weeks ago, trading city noise for this rural quiet. And though the space felt foreign, Ethan's presence made it hers. Tonight, she cooked for them, a small act of love in a house that seemed to watch her every move. Ava wasn't new to the strange. Her life had been a patchwork of oddities, keys vanishing from hooks, shadows flitting across empty rooms, doors easing open in the night. She'd learned to trust her instincts, a sixth sense that prickled when something wasn't right. From the moment she stepped into the trailer, she'd felt it, a presence subtle, like a breath held just out of reach. It wasn't malicious, not at first. A mug would shift from counter to sink. The bathroom door, latched tight, would stand ajar by dawn. Shadows danced in her peripheral vision, gone when she turned. She told herself it was the house settling, the wind nudging loose frames, but the air carried a weight, as if something waited for her to acknowledge it. Then the smell came. As Ava reached for the salt, a faint, sour tang cut through the aroma of her cooking, sharp and unnatural, like damp earth mixed with decay. Her hand froze, the spoon hovering above the pot. The kitchen was clean, the trash emptied, the fridge stocked with fresh groceries. She sniffed the air, her pulse quickening. The smell grew, curling around her, heavy and insistent, as if it had seeped from the walls themselves. She turned off the stove, her movements slow, and scanned the room. The light flickered, casting jagged shadows across the linoleum. Something's here. The thought wasn't a question. It was a certainty, cold and unyielding, sinking into her bones. She called for Ethan, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. He was in the living room, sprawled on the couch with their dogs, Milo and... "You smell that?" she asked, stepping into the doorway. He frowned, sniffing the air, then shook his head. "Just dinner," he said, his smile easy. But the smell lingered, faint now, as if retreating from his presence. Ava forced a laugh, returning to the kitchen, but the unease stayed, a splinter in her mind. That night, as they ate, she watched. The hallway beyond the kitchen, its shadows deeper than they should be, stretching toward the bedroom at its end. Weeks later, the trailer's whispers grew bolder. One evening, Ava slipped out of bed to fetch water, the hallway a tunnel of darkness. The linoleum was icy under her feet, the fridge's hum a faint anchor. As she filled her glass, a flicker caught her eye. At the hallway's end, Ethan's face peered from the bedroom doorframe, his eyes fixed on her, unblinking, his expression blank. Her heart skipped, a playful smile forming. Is he pranking me? "Ethan, what's up?" she called, her voice light. No answer. The face lingered, its gaze heavy, then vanished. She laughed it off, shaking her head, and returned to the bedroom. Ethan was there, buried under the blankets, his breathing slow. "Why were you watching me?" she asked, nudging him. He stirred, confused. "I've been asleep," he mumbled, his voice thick. A chill ran through her, sharp and deep. Not him. The incidents piled up, each one chipping away at her sense of safety. One morning, Ava returned from a coffee run to find the shoe rack by the door empty. Her sneakers, Ethan's boots, even Luna's chewed-up leash. Every item was neatly arranged on the floor, as if placed with deliberate care. Her pulse raced. The dogs? But Milo, crate-trained and locked in his pen, couldn't have reached the rack. She checked the living room, her breath catching. Milo's crate, heavy and bolted, stood in the kitchen, 10 feet from its usual spot. The dogs were frantic, their barks sharp, their eyes wide with fear. Ava's stomach twisted. This isn't possible. She called Ethan, her voice shaking, but he was at work, his tone calm, rational. "Maybe you moved it and forgot," he said. She hung up, her hands trembling, knowing she hadn't. Then came the night that shattered her. As they headed to bed, Ava stepped into the bedroom, Ethan's footsteps close behind. The air was thick, the shadows dense, as if the trailer were holding its breath. She reached for the light, her fingers brushing the switch, and froze. In the open closet, Ethan's face stared back, his eyes dark, unblinking, his mouth a thin, unnatural line. Her blood turned to ice, her breath trapped. Run. But she couldn't move, pinned by that gaze, so like Ethan's yet so wrong. Ethan's hand touched her shoulder, his voice soft. "Ava, what's wrong?" She spun, her heart lurching. He was there, real and solid, standing behind her. The closet was empty, its shelves bare, but the air pulsed with a presence, heavy and deliberate. She didn't sleep, her eyes fixed on the closet door, her mind replaying that face, a mockery of the man she loved. Ava knew she couldn't dismiss. Tuni, she'd faced the strange before. Whispers in empty rooms, shadows that moved. But this was different. This wasn't a restless spirit or a trick of the light. It was intentional, invasive, wearing Ethan's face to taunt her. She planned to smudge the trailer, to burn sage and reclaim the space, but the act felt frail against the weight of what she'd seen. The trailer wasn't just a home. It was a mirror, reflecting something that didn't belong, something that knew her name.